Tom had always dreamed of a place where he could feel free and close to nature. For many years, he lived in the busy city. The noise, the rush, and the tall buildings made him feel tired and lost. He wanted something different, a place where he could breathe fresh air, watch the stars at night, and hear birds singing in the morning. A quiet ranch far from the busy streets was what he needed. After working hard for many years, Tom finally saved enough money to buy a small ranch on the edge of a small town. The ranch was not very big, but it was perfect for him. It had green fields, a few old trees, and a small house that needed some fixing. The land was empty and peaceful, with a small stream running along the side. To Tom, this was a new beginning. On the first day he visited the ranch alone, he walked slowly around the fields. The sun was warm on his face, and a soft breeze moved the tall grass. Tom felt something he had not felt in a long time: hope. He thought about planting vegetables, building a small barn for animals, and sitting on the porch to watch the sunset. The ranch was his dream coming true. Tom had simple plans for the ranch. He wanted to grow tomatoes, carrots, and beans. He wanted to raise a few chickens for fresh eggs and maybe one day get a goat. He did not want to make the ranch big or busy, he only wanted to live quietly and enjoy nature. For him, it was a place to heal from years of stress and find happiness in small things. Every morning, Tom would wake up early and go outside. He loved watching the morning light touch the leaves and listening to the birds start their day. Sometimes, he sat under the big oak tree near the stream and thought about his life. He remembered the city with its noise and fast pace, and he felt grateful for the quiet around him now. The neighbors were kind, but they kept to themselves mostly. A few families lived nearby, and they had their own small farms. Sometimes, they would wave as Tom passed by on his old truck. Tom felt comfortable here because no one judged him or asked too many questions. It was a simple life, and that was exactly what he wanted. One evening, Tom sat on his porch with a cup of tea. The sky was full of stars, and the air smelled like fresh earth and flowers. He felt calm and happy. The city life was far behind him, and the future looked bright. For the first time in many years, Tom felt at peace. He thought about the hard work ahead. The house needed repairs, the fields needed clearing, and the fences were old. But Tom was ready. He believed that with patience and effort, he could make the ranch a beautiful home. The quiet land gave him strength and hope. Tom's favorite part of the ranch was the stream. He would walk along it, watching the water flow gently over stones and listening to the soft sounds it made. The stream was like a friend who told stories without words. Tom imagined sitting there one day with friends, sharing stories and laughter. As days passed, Tom started fixing the house. He painted the walls, repaired the roof, and planted flowers around the porch. Every small change made the place feel more like home. Sometimes, he felt tired and lonely, but the peace of the ranch kept him going. One morning, while walking near the fence at the back of the ranch, Tom noticed something strange. The fence looked newer than before. He hadn't seen anyone working there, but the wood was fresh and the posts were strong. He wondered who had put it up. Tom asked one of the neighbors about the fence. The neighbor told him it was put up by the Homeowners Association, or HOA, a group of people who made rules for the neighborhood. The fence was to protect the homes and farms from strangers and keep the area safe. At first, Tom thought the fence was a good idea. Safety was important. But when he tried to open the gate, he found it was locked. He did not have a key. The neighbor said only HOA members had keys and had to pay monthly fees. Tom felt a strange feeling in his chest. The ranch was his dream, but now he could not enter freely. The fence was a barrier between him and his land. He had never heard about the HOA or their rules when he bought the ranch. That night, Tom sat on the porch and looked at the dark fence around his land. The stars shone above, but the fence felt like a wall between him and the sky. He thought about the freedom he had felt before and wondered what would happen now. Tom knew he had to find a way to solve this problem. He loved his ranch and would not give up easily. He decided that tomorrow, he would visit the HOA office and ask questions. He wanted to understand why the fence was there and how he could get the key. The ranch was more than land to Tom, it was hope, freedom, and a fresh start. He was ready to fight for it. The next morning, Tom woke up early, the quiet still hanging in the air. The memory of the locked fence at his ranch weighed on his mind. It was strange, a fence he never expected, blocking the land he had dreamed about for so long. With a cup of coffee in hand, Tom decided today was the day to get answers. He drove his old truck into town and found the small office of the Homeowners Association, the HOA. It was a plain building with a few chairs and a desk. A woman named Mrs. Collins greeted him with a polite smile. "Good morning," Tom said. "I own the ranch just outside the town. I came to ask about the fence that surrounds the neighborhood. I didn't know anything about it before, and I don't have a key to the gate." Mrs. Collins nodded slowly. "Yes, the HOA put up the fence a few weeks ago. It's for the safety of the residents. We want to keep the area private and secure. Only members of the HOA have keys to the gate." Tom felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "I don't remember being told about the HOA when I bought the ranch. Why wasn't I told?" Mrs. Collins looked away for a moment and then said, "The HOA was formed last year by the other landowners. They agreed on rules to protect the neighborhood's value and safety. The fence is part of that plan." "But I didn't agree to join the HOA," Tom said quietly. "I just bought my land. Why can't I come and go as I please?" Mrs. Collins's face showed a hint of sympathy. "I understand, but the rules say only members can have the keys. If you want, you can join the HOA and pay monthly fees. That way, you'll get a key and access." Tom shook his head. "I don't want to pay fees or follow rules that I didn't agree to. This ranch is my home, my freedom. I want to keep it that way." Mrs. Collins nodded. "It's not easy, I know. But the fence is for everyone's safety." It was a decision made by the majority. Tom left the office feeling confused and angry. The place he loved suddenly felt like a prison. How could people decide to fence him out of his own land? The more he thought about it, the more unfair it seemed. Driving back to the ranch, Tom looked at the fence again. The tall wooden panels cast long shadows over the fields. The locked gate stood firm, like a wall between him and the life he wanted to live. He walked to the gate and pressed his hand against the cold wood. The lock was strong, and the only way in was with a key he didn't have. Tom's heart ached. The ranch was his dream, but now it was a locked box. Tom spent the evening sitting on his porch, the stars shining bright above. He thought about what Mrs. Collins had said. Joining the HOA meant paying fees and following rules he didn't like. But without a key, how else could he access his land? He decided to ask the neighbors for advice. Maybe someone else knew a way to help. The next day, Tom visited a neighbor named Mr. Lee, who lived a few houses down the road. Mr. Lee was an older man with a kind face and gentle eyes. Tom hoped he could get some answers. "Mr. Lee," Tom began, "I don't have the gate key. I don't want to join the HOA because of the fees and rules. Do you know if there's another way to get into my ranch?" Mr. Lee sighed. The HOA rules are strict. Most of us joined because it's easier to live here with the fence. But I understand how you feel. You should not be locked out of your own land. Tom nodded. Do you think the fence is fair? It blocks the road I used to take every day. It's hard to say, Mr. Lee replied. The fence keeps some trouble away, but it also keeps some people in. I guess it's a balance. But you might want to think carefully about your next steps. Tom thanked Mr. Lee and walked back home. He felt torn. The fence was a problem he needed to solve, but he wasn't sure how. That night, Tom could not sleep. His mind kept returning to the fence and the locked gate. He imagined waking up one day and finding the gate wide open, the fence gone. The ranch was free again. But how? The next morning, Tom took a deep breath. He knew waiting and worrying wouldn't help. He had to act. He began to research the property laws and the HOA rules. He read about his rights as a landowner and the powers of the HOA. Some of the rules made sense, but others felt like they were against his freedom. Tom thought about talking to a lawyer. Maybe there was a legal way to open the gate without joining the HOA. He also considered speaking to the town officials to explain his problem. But most of all, Tom wanted to keep the ranch simple. He didn't want long fights or problems. He wanted to live peacefully, like he had dreamed. As the days passed, Tom found himself standing by the fence often, looking at the locked gate. It was a constant reminder of the walls between him and his dream. One afternoon, Tom saw children playing nearby, laughing and running around. He smiled. Maybe there was hope. Maybe the fence was just a problem to solve, not the end of the story. Tom promised himself he would find a way to open that gate, not just with a key, but with patience, courage, and hope. The ranch was his home. No fence, no locked gate, could take that away. Tom felt the fence closing in around him more each day. His ranch, the place he had dreamed about for years, now felt like a cage. The locked gate stood between him and the life he wanted to live. But Tom was not a man to give up easily. He decided it was time to look for real answers. After his visit to the HOA office and talking with his neighbor, Tom realized he needed to learn more about his rights as a landowner. He went to the town library, a small building with quiet reading rooms and helpful librarians. There, he searched through books about property laws, homeowners associations, and local regulations. Tom read carefully. The HOA had certain powers to protect the neighborhood, but landowners like him also had rights. If the fence blocked a public road or stopped access to private property without permission, that could be a legal problem. But laws were complicated, and Tom was not an expert. Feeling a bit lost, Tom wrote down questions. Can the HOA lock me out of my own ranch? Do I have to join the HOA to get a key? Is there a way to open the gate without paying fees? He hoped someone could give him clear answers. Next, Tom called a local lawyer recommended by a friend. The lawyer's office was neat, with shelves full of books and papers. Tom explained his problem clearly. The lawyer listened carefully, nodding. The HOA can set rules, but they cannot take away your right to access your property, the lawyer said. You have the right to use your land as you please, within the law. If the fence blocks your entrance, that could be a problem for them. Tom felt a spark of hope. So, what can I do? He asked. You can negotiate with the HOA, the lawyer said. Ask for a key or a way to get in without joining the HOA. If they refuse, you may have to take legal action, but that should be the last choice. Tom thanked the lawyer and left feeling more confident. He was not alone in this fight. On his way home, Tom stopped at the town hall to speak with the mayor's assistant. The assistant was friendly and listened carefully to Tom's story. She promised to bring the issue to the town council and see if something could be done. For the first time, Tom felt that others cared about his problem. Maybe the fence was not just a rule but a bigger issue for the whole community. That evening, Tom sat by the fireplace in his small living room. He thought about the lawyer's advice and the town's help. He still faced many challenges, but he had a plan. The next day, Tom wrote a letter to the HOA board. In the letter, he explained his situation calmly and clearly. He asked for permission to get a key to the gate without paying fees or joining the HOA. He promised to respect the neighborhood and keep the ranch peaceful. Tom mailed the letter and waited. Days passed slowly. Tom continued working on his ranch, fixing the old barn and planting seeds in the soil. The fence still stood tall and silent, but Tom's hope grew stronger. Finally, a letter came from the HOA. Tom opened it carefully. The board thanked him for his letter but explained that all landowners must join the HOA and pay fees to get a key. Tom felt disappointed but not defeated. The letter showed the fence and the rules were not going away soon. He needed to think again. Tom talked to his neighbors more. Some were unhappy about the fence, but most accepted it. A few said joining the HOA was better than fighting. Tom understood their point but still wanted to keep his freedom. He did not want to pay fees or follow rules he never agreed to. One afternoon, while walking by the gate, Tom noticed something interesting. The lock looked strong, but the hinges on the gate seemed old. He thought, maybe I can find another way. Tom spent time studying the fence and the gate. He measured the posts and checked for weak spots. He wanted to understand how the fence was built, not to break it, but to find a way to open it with respect. Tom remembered the lawyer's words about negotiation. Maybe if he owned the land where the fence and gate stood, he could open the gate whenever he wanted. That idea grew in his mind like a small seed. Tom thought, if I buy the property where the fence and gate are, I will have the key because it will be my land too. It was a big idea. The land might be expensive. But Tom was ready to try. He started asking questions about the land ownership. Who owned the fence and the gate area? How much would it cost? Tom learned that the fence and gate were built on land owned by the HOA. If he could buy that land, the gate key would belong to him. The thought made Tom feel excited and nervous. It was a new path, one he had not thought about before. That night, Tom looked at the fence again. The moonlight touched the tall wooden boards. Tom smiled softly. He felt ready. No fence or locked gate could stop him now. Tom's mind was filled with the idea of buying the land where the fence and the gate stood. It was not a small decision. It was a big step, one that could change everything. But he believed it was the only way to truly solve the problem and get the freedom he wanted on his ranch. For days, Tom thought about the choice. Buying the property meant more money than he had planned to spend. It would mean dealing with the HOA in a new way, and possibly facing more rules or problems. But Tom also knew the fence was blocking his dreams. If he didn't act, the gate would stay locked, and his ranch would never feel like home. One morning, Tom sat at his kitchen table, staring at the papers he had collected. He had talked to the town officials, the lawyer, and even the local real estate agent. Now he had a clear answer: the land under the fence and the gate belonged to the HOA, and it was for sale. Tom sighed deeply. Could he really buy the land? Could he take control of the gate and open the fence for himself and his ranch? The more Tom thought, the more he realized that this choice was not just about the fence. It was about standing up for his rights, about fighting for the place that meant everything to him. That day, Tom called the HOA's office and asked to speak with the board president. He wanted to discuss the possibility of buying the land. The president, Mr. Harris, was a tall man with a serious face. When Tom explained his idea, Mr. Harris was quiet for a moment. "It's unusual for one person to want to buy the fence property," Mr. Harris said slowly. "But if you are serious, we can talk about the price." Tom felt a mix of hope and nervousness. He knew this was the chance he had been waiting for. The next week was full of meetings and phone calls. Tom learned more about the land, the price, and the terms of the sale. It was more money than he had imagined, but Tom was determined. He looked at his savings, talked to his family, and thought about borrowing some money. Every choice was hard, but every choice also felt right. One evening, Tom sat on his porch and looked at the fence again. The wooden boards were tall and strong, but the thought that he could own this land and control the gate filled him with new energy. "I have to do this," Tom whispered to himself. "This is my ranch. I will not let a fence stop me." After careful thought, Tom decided to make an offer to buy the property. He sent a letter to the HOA board, explaining his wish to buy the fence and gate land. Days passed slowly. Tom worked on the ranch, planting seeds, and fixing fences. His heart was full of hope, but also uncertainty. Then, one afternoon, the phone rang. It was Mr. Harris. "We have considered your offer, Tom," he said. "We are willing to sell the property to you under certain conditions." Tom listened carefully as Mr. Harris explained the details. The price was high, but fair. Tom would own the land under the fence and gate, and the key would be his. After asking some questions, Tom agreed to meet the board and sign the papers. The meeting was quiet but important. Tom sat at the table with the HOA board members. They talked about the sale, the rules, and the future. Finally, Tom signed the papers. The property was his. A wave of relief and happiness washed over him. He was no longer locked out. The next morning, Tom went to the gate with a new key in his hand. His hands trembled as he slid the key into the lock. Click. The gate slowly opened. Tom stepped through, feeling the sun on his face and the soft grass under his boots. For the first time in months, Tom was free to walk on his ranch without barriers. He looked around, smiling. The fence still stood, but now it was no longer a wall. It was part of his land. Tom knew this was not the end of his journey, but a new beginning. Owning the gate key was more than just access. It was a symbol of his strength and determination. The ranch was his home again. And Tom promised himself he would protect this freedom, no matter what. The morning sun rose gently over Tom's ranch, shining warmly on the fields and the small house he had worked so hard to fix. The gate, once locked and unreachable, now stood open wide. Tom held the key tightly in his hand, a simple metal piece that carried so much meaning. It was not just a key for a gate, it was a key to his dream, to his freedom, and to the life he wanted to live. That day, Tom decided to take a long walk through his ranch. The grass felt soft under his boots, and the breeze carried the fresh smell of earth and flowers. For the first time in many weeks, he moved without worry, without walls closing in on him. As he walked, Tom thought about how much had changed in such a short time. The fence had once felt like a prison, a barrier that separated him from the life he wanted. But now, with the gate open and the key in his pocket, the ranch felt like home again. Tom stopped near the old oak tree by the stream. The tree's branches stretched wide, casting cool shadows on the ground. He sat down and smiled, thinking about how peaceful everything felt. The ranch was still quiet, but Tom was not alone. The neighbors came by to say hello, some with friendly smiles, others with curious looks. They knew about the fence and the HOA, but they also saw Tom's determination. One neighbor, Mrs. Green, walked over with a basket of fresh vegetables from her garden. "Welcome back to your land, Tom," she said kindly. "I'm glad you got the gate open." Tom thanked her, feeling warmth in his chest. The kindness made him realize that the fence had changed more than just the land, it had changed the way people lived together. Now, with the gate open, Tom hoped to bring back some of the old community spirit. He wanted to share his ranch with friends and neighbors, to invite them for small gatherings and celebrations. Over the next few weeks, Tom worked hard. He planted more vegetables, fixed the fences around his fields, and built a small wooden bench near the stream. He wanted the ranch to be a place where people could come and feel welcome. One Saturday afternoon, Tom decided to host a small gathering. He invited a few neighbors to come by for tea and homemade bread. The sun was warm, and the birds sang softly as people arrived. At first, the neighbors were a little shy. The fence had made everyone keep to themselves for so long. But as the afternoon went on, smiles grew wider, and laughter filled the air. Tom felt happy watching the neighbors talk and share stories. The fence was still there, but the gate was open, and so were the hearts of the people. One young boy named Sam came up to Tom and asked, "Can I help you with the garden?" Tom smiled. "Of course, Sam. There's always work to do, and I'd be glad to have your help." The boy's eyes lit up, and together they walked toward the vegetable patch. Tom felt a deep joy in teaching someone about the earth and the plants. The days grew warmer, and Tom's ranch became a little hub of life. People came by more often, and the fence felt less like a barrier and more like a border that everyone respected. Tom still kept the key safe in his pocket, but he no longer felt trapped by the fence. Instead, he saw it as part of his journey, a challenge he had overcome. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in orange and pink, Tom sat on his porch and looked out over the fields. He thought about the long road he had traveled, from the moment he first saw the fence to now, when the gate stood open. Tom understood that freedom was not just about having no fences. It was about courage, patience, and standing up for what you believe in. He was proud of what he had done. And he was ready for whatever came next. For Tom, the ranch was not just land. It was a place of hope and new beginnings. The key in his hand was a reminder that sometimes, the hardest challenges bring the greatest rewards. And Tom knew his story was just beginning. Tom was enjoying his new life on the ranch. The gate was open, the neighbors were friendly, and the land was full of life again. But, as sometimes happens in life, a new challenge was quietly waiting just around the corner. One bright morning, Tom woke to the sound of distant voices near the gate. Curious, he walked outside and saw a group of people standing at the entrance to his ranch. They wore badges and carried official papers. Tom's heart beat faster. The group introduced themselves as representatives from the town's planning office. They explained that there was a new plan to build a road that would run close to the ranch and the fence. The project was meant to connect the town to a new neighborhood across the hill. Tom listened carefully. The road would bring more people and more cars. It would make the area busier and louder. The fence and the gate might have to be changed or even removed. Tom felt a deep worry. He had fought so hard to open the gate and keep his ranch peaceful. Now, this new plan could change everything again. That day, Tom spent hours thinking about what to do. He knew the town needed to grow, but he also wanted to protect the quiet life he had worked for. He decided to attend the next town meeting. Maybe there, he could speak up and share his thoughts. The meeting was held in the town hall, a large room filled with many people. Some were excited about the new road, seeing it as a chance for progress and more business. Others were concerned about noise, safety, and changes to their neighborhoods. When it was Tom's turn, he stood up and spoke clearly. "I understand the town needs to grow, but the ranch is my home. The fence and gate protect my land and my peace. I hope the road can be planned in a way that respects this." Some people nodded, others looked unsure. The town officials promised to consider everyone's concerns before making a final decision. Tom left the meeting feeling hopeful but unsure. The future of his ranch was still uncertain. The next days were full of work and waiting. Tom continued to care for his land, but his mind was often with the road project. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the planning office. It said the road would be built close to the fence, and some parts of the fence might have to be removed to make space. Tom felt a cold sadness. The fence had been a problem before, but now it was part of his home. Losing it felt like losing a piece of himself. Determined, Tom wrote a letter to the planning office. He asked if there was any way to protect the fence or build the road without breaking the peace of the ranch. He also asked if he could meet with the planners to find a better solution. A few days later, Tom was invited to a meeting with the town planners and engineers. The meeting was held near the ranch, where the road would be built. Tom showed them around his land, explaining why the fence and the gate were important. He talked about the animals, the neighbors, and the quiet life he loved. The planners listened carefully. They agreed that the ranch was special and said they would do their best to find a solution that worked for everyone. Together, they looked at maps and drawings. Ideas were shared. Some suggested moving the fence a little, others talked about building a small bridge or a new gate. Tom felt hopeful again. The challenge was big, but the town was willing to listen. Over the next weeks, Tom worked with the planners. He gave suggestions and visited the construction site often. Slowly, a new plan took shape. The road would be built near the ranch but would curve around the fence. A new gate would be built that fit with the ranch's look. The fence would stay mostly the same. When the final plan was approved, Tom felt a deep relief. The ranch would stay peaceful. The fence and the gate would remain. Tom smiled, feeling proud. He had faced the unexpected challenge with courage and hope. The ranch was not just land, it was a place where dreams grew, where fences could be opened, and where new beginnings were always possible. The sun was warm on Tom's face as he walked through the open gate. The fence stood strong and tall, but now it felt like a friend, not a barrier. After months of struggle, fights, and hard choices, Tom finally felt peace. The road had been built carefully, bending around his ranch just as the planners had promised. The new gate was strong but welcoming, and Tom had the only key. It was the key to his land, his freedom, and his dreams. As Tom walked across the fields, he remembered all the moments he had spent fighting for this day. The fence that once felt like a wall was now a part of his life, a symbol of how he never gave up. Tom looked out over the land-green fields, the old oak tree, the little stream that ran quietly beside the barn. His ranch was alive with possibility. Neighbors stopped by often now. The fence did not keep people away anymore. It marked the border of Tom's world but invited friendship. They came to share stories, help with chores, or simply enjoy the peaceful land. One evening, Tom sat by the fire pit with some of his neighbors. The sky was dark, filled with stars. The soft crackle of the fire and the warm voices around him made Tom feel grateful. He looked at Mrs. Green, who smiled and passed him a cup of tea. "You've done well, Tom," she said gently. "You never gave up, even when things were hard." Tom nodded. "It was not easy, but I learned a lot. The fence was more than wood and nails, it was a test. And now, I feel like I'm truly free." The neighbors laughed softly and raised their cups. The fence and gate had started as a problem, but now they were part of something bigger, a community. Tom thought about the long road he had traveled, from the first time he saw the fence to now, when the gate opened to welcome friends. He remembered how lonely he had felt, locked out and unsure. But he had found strength in patience, hope, and action. And now, Tom's ranch was more than just land. It was a place where dreams grew, where fences could be opened, and where freedom was possible. As the fire flickered, Tom looked up at the stars. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, but he also knew he could face them. Because now, he had the key not just to the gate, but to his own future. Tom smiled softly. The fence was still there, but it was no longer a barrier. It was a part of his story, a story of courage, hope, and new beginnings. And with the open gate, Tom stepped forward into the life he had always dreamed of.